Okay, okay.
So,
I was born in St. Louis, but raised in Carlinville.
turned
And
17 to kick me out.
okay.
Really?
I'm gonna ask a really silly question. There's a hospital in Jackson?
There was
Okay.
in 1968.
Wow.
There's not any longer. Well, they turned it into a nursing home.
Okay.
I think it closed in like the late 70s or 80s.
Because I've never heard that there ever was one over there.
Yeah.
But a lot of little towns have them.
Yeah, they did. But, I mean, they couldn't just.
They have really good midwives there.
Midwives? Okay.
Yeah, I didn't talk to her.
Where are we going?
The police officer talked to her, so you might check in with
I
him.
did. I didn't recognize the name. She came in there because she knows me, and I'm just like,
Okay. Yeah, I don't know how much to tell you on that. I stayed out of it because he seemed to be handling it. So.
Well, I turned it off. It's been a long day, okay? It's a Tuesday that feels like a Monday.
Just want to make sure the mics are on.
See.
The little cute one in my hand.
You're not on,
My little
Mark.
mini says, push it. There it is. You're on.
You're on.
Okay.
No, you're right. Do you have a short of yours?
Try it again.
You have a short of your mic. Micah.
I can't.
Denise, you got your own little name tag now. That's awesome.
Go girl.
You're official.
Oh, Lord.
That's a cool thing.
It's okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm doing fantastic.
Not today. Don't make decisions.
It's okay, give it to Tony. It's fine, give it to Tony.
This man. Go to them. It's 6:28. I finally read everything on this agenda. Well, I didn't have a chance to read anything till just now.
I'm Mr. Darrell. Oh my gosh, my glasses. How you doing? I'm good. How you doing? I'm all right. Good. Bet you're staying busy. I heard we're hiring for some other positions. You probably have some time between midnight and about 5 in the morning, don't you?
I'm thinking about becoming a custodian.
Custodian? Okay. Well, we need overnight people too.
oh, Jennifer, did you get your mask back that I brought back?
Yes, I did. Thank you much. You could have kept it because that one's so gigantic on me.
I've got like 6 of them at home. I thought, oh, I need to wash these back.
No, it's helpful. I can keep a basket of them in there.
Still got a minute? It's okay. Since my thing is real.
Board members, if you haven't turned on your microphones yet, this is just a reminder to do that before 6:30.
Thank you, Ms. Hammers.
You're welcome.
You just turned it off. There's no purpose.
I don't think yours is hard. There we go.
Hello. Didn't even see you today. I know. Janice, how are you tonight? Yeah, it's good to see you. It was a Tuesday night, yeah.
Right.
Yes. The good thing is
I saw
tomorrow's
that.
Wednesday.
Good day.
I'll bring a bunch more and I'll put them in there.
Are we 2 meetings in a row where we're on time and
Waiting.
Don't jinx
that's
us.
fantastic, right?
Okay, let's go.
Too excited.
Okay, the time is now 6:30. We are in, I'm going to call the meeting of the 186 School Board in session. We will start out with 3.1, the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Actually see it.
Okay, moving on to 4.1, approval of the agenda for September the 7th, 2021.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Do we have any discussion? Ms. Hammers?
Austin.
Aye.
Blissett.
Aye.
Lael Wolf.
Aye.
Mars.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Ringer.
Aye.
Zimmers.
Aye.
That is 7 aye votes.
All right, moving on to 5.1. Public comments will occur during the public comments portion of the meeting. The board will not allow interruption during the meeting. If you are interested in addressing the board, fill out the required public participation at board meetings form and submit to Ms. Hammers. Please email your name, phone number, and topic of discussion or agenda item to boe@sps186.org if you wish to participate via telephone. All right. Moving on to 5.2, the student report. Ms. Thompson?
And welcome.
We had,
Is it on already?
I think, we had our first superintendent roundtable meeting this past week, and one of the major topics that was discussed was AP testing. Lots of students feel that they're unprepared when it comes to AP tests. It seemed that it was more so an issue of students not knowing about all of the outside resources that they have to go along with the ones that they know about in school. So this is something that we are working on to figure out better ways. We're considering maybe study groups, whether it has to happen through Zoom or however else we could do that. And then maybe sending out information with verified links to websites and videos to help students prepare for these tests. And then another issue is just traffic flow when it's dismissal and passing periods. Lots of students are saying that it is hectic at schools and just hard for students to spread out. So maybe if there could be signs put up or just tape on the floors or something to just help guide students when it comes to that. And a lot of the older kids express that they just want to make sure that the younger kids are understanding what the signs mean and really knowing like about social distancing and everything like that.
Janice, I think it's a great idea that you're taking leadership to help with that student voice at the school, so thank you so much. And the study group idea is amazing.
Did you have a lot of participants?
Yeah, we had a pretty good amount of people.
We had about 30 students this time.
Yeah.
I think most of them had been there before, I think, like last year, but we're getting the word out.
We heard good things about the superintendent's roundtable, so thank you and your peers for being a part of that really important discussion. I think it really helps to bring a voice for students, and we really appreciate it, so thank you.
And I was going to say congratulations on the article.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, awesome.
Very nice.
Janice, talking to students, do you have any idea, are most of them taking the AP test at the end of the, was there any consensus on, are people taking them? Are they just taking the credit for the class? Or?
I know a lot of students are planning on taking the exams. They just feel like they would be more confident about it if they had more resources and help and support to go with it.
Is that a test that's taken like at the end of the year, or you take it like twice? How does that, is it like finals or?
It's at the end of the year. Usually around like April and May, students take them. It's all based on when College Board sets the date for them to be taken.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Well, thank you for an excellent report, and we look forward to more input because, you guys are there every day, And, we want to try to accommodate you every way we can. So please, be as candid as you can, especially when you have the superintendents here.
That's right.
So thank you so much.
And my staff's here.
And speaking of the superintendent, 6.1, the superintendent's report. Superintendent?
All right, President Mars and members of the board, I have my usual presentation, and then we have a guest speaker that was invited on behalf of the board tonight. So if you want to get me started there.
Yeah, I thought that it had gone up, but my thing seems to have stopped mirroring.
I do this with hopefully my glasses not fogging up so that I can read. All right, if you want to,
I'm getting it.
my pictures in there.
Just thinking about it.
Yeah. I had it all set up and then probably jumped the gun.
I can start off on the first slide, and then when you get it
Yes.
up and going. So our physicals and immunizations that are actually required by law, these are your ones that we've had all throughout the past. Those have been extended until September 27th. The nurses are, obviously busy with other things related to COVID and some other things, and also families have had a hard time getting in and getting all of those things done. So we want to make sure, by law, we have until October 15th. In the past, we moved this date earlier because if you don't have it on October 15th and you get excluded at that time, it's very detrimental to the end of the quarter. So we've moved it to September 27th, hoping that we can get as many students through with their physicals and immunizations as possible. And so with that, we do have, if you go to the third slide now, I just saw it. Next one down, please. Yeah. So we do have immunization and physical clinics planned. Thank you to SIU School of Medicine. I know Ms. Austin had some things to do with that. This, once again, is free of charge. I think a lot of people think that these appointments cost money, but they do not. They're going to be on Saturday, September 18th, and again on the 25th, both from 10 until 1 o'clock with some amazing volunteers from SIU School of Medicine. They're going to be housed at the NAACP building. It's a brand-new building that they just purchased and refurbished. It's got a great community room and then smaller rooms to do these clinics. It is at 801 South 11th Street. There's no appointment that is needed, but we also want to give a big shout out to the Sangamon County Health Department. They held a clinic today and got several students through today as well. So we're continuing to do those things throughout the community, and it's to our medical partners that we're getting these things done. So we're very much appreciative. Also, on the COVID clinic front, many people have been saying, how can I get my COVID vaccination too? And if they don't want to go to a third party, we're actually looking at having IEMA come again, and anybody who wishes to get their COVID vaccine. The tentative date on that is September 18th at the Springfield High Commons. We kind of wanted to piggyback that off with the NAACP and just say, if they're there for their physical, that they could go over to Springfield High and get their COVID vaccine if they're 12 or older, or an adult. So we will announce this once it's confirmed, just trying to make sure that we're opening our schools to what we need to do in order to get people vaccinated if they wish to be vaccinated. Moving on to slide number 5, Julie. Yeah, we just wanted to give you some visions of what's going on in the school. If there's anything I can say, it's that our foster grandparents may be the most dedicated people in the whole world across Springfield. These two wonderful humans have come from the very beginning, working at Enos School from the beginning of the school year, and they're just couldn't wait to get back. People are really missing that interaction and missing the love that they get from our foster grandparents. We couldn't be more proud of them, and there's some pictures of students learning, and you can see a little bit of what we're doing in the classroom setup to make sure that students are social distance and wearing their masks. On the next slide, you'll see some Fairview Falcons in the classroom, still using social distancing and doing some different things in the classroom to make it work, but just to see shiny faces learning, that makes my day every day. The next slide is some Matheny Withrow Meet the Teacher slides. They did a lot of things outside. They have a beautiful overhang out there, and we're able to spread out in the gym and the lobby and outside, and plenty of room out there to do that so that people could still meet their teacher but be outside and feel like they were doing it in a safe way. So very excited they had some scoops of ice cream to celebrate as well. I wanted to give you facilities updates. So we did give you a full packet, but just to give the community a little insight, we did some aerial views. Thanks to Rick Kidd, who's our carpenter that has a drone that he owns that took some pictures for us. We've got some aerial views. We're going to continue to do these aerial drone views as things go on because it's kind of a cool way to see how the construction progresses. Blackhawks, John Co. Construction, and the interior work is proceeding each and every day there. Except the following, we have a delay on door hardware. Why, I don't know, but it's just one of those distribution issues. We also we're using some temporary doors. They look like doors, but they're not pretty doors, and they don't match, but it is a door. They have them on there. And then flooring materials are also a little bit delayed. So hopefully, we're using cement floors right now, but it's good and it's makeshift. It's working fine. So Daryl, thanks for all your hard work. We know those delays are difficult. The exterior addition work continues, so you can see some of that on the outside there in the middle of the building, the work that they're doing, and it's an aerial view. So it's pretty awesome. If you move on to the next slide, that's kind of what one of the bathrooms looks like. And then this is sort of like a storage room, a teacher work area here on the right. So you can see that things are starting to take shape, and it's going to be pretty amazing when it's all done. So Butler Elementary, if you are looking down there, you see the work that's at the bottom of the picture. That would actually be to the north of the building, bottom part of the picture. You can see the brick sampling that they took. They were very careful to match the historic brick that was already on Butler. So it's almost a dead match, so it's going to look really good and be visually appealing to the eye. I think you've noticed when you go to buildings, there's like 6 different color bricks, and you're just like, that doesn't make sense. So good job on that. It looks really good. And then we also kind of have you can see since we took the aerial, they're actually starting to do some digging and making things seem like a real big construction project in a pretty tight area over there at Butler with Dial and Laurel, so it's made for some interesting traffic challenges. Du Bois Elementary is next. You see an aerial view on so this is actually the south side of the building, so it'd be the southeast side of the building. You can see the big hole where the addition is going to go on. You can see they're preparing the ground, but they also renovated all the bathrooms at Du Bois as well. Don't think those have been renovated since I went to school there, so I think it is pretty awesome to see the brand new flooring, tile, dividers, everything. So it looks really awesome. We keep moving down, Julie, to Fairview Elementary School. We have Schwartz Construction. You can see to this would actually be challenging my kind of the west side of the building, but it'd be slightly southwest. And you can see the addition that's starting to go up, and then the beginnings of the phase in the middle of the building there where the offices are going to go. So the interior work is progressing. All occupied areas are ready for school. Interior renovation areas are separated from the school zones, so it's really going to be easy. And that's even the electrical rough-ins are ready to go. So the concrete block walls for the storage area off the gym are complete, and you can see the photos of Fairview. Franklin is very visible from the road when you drive by there. It's right off the front of the school, so you can start to see not only the back addition, but the work at the front, and you can see that the walls are up, and you can see the entrance in. I was out there when you're inside those brick areas. They look like classrooms now, so things are moving along quite fine. They finished all the partitions and the restrooms there, continuing construction on the new additions, so it's just a day-by-day progress at Franklin Middle School. Grant Middle School, right next door. As you can see, all the work is behind the school, so you don't really see it as you drive by, but you can see the big footings of the construction, and they've also done some bathroom renovations there. The roof is also getting replaced. It should be done in about 3 weeks. So we should have like 2 weeks for the flat areas and 1 week for the edge work on the roof. The restroom partitions have been replaced with the final nice partitions. The new boiler is coming in probably by the 16th of September and will be installed, perfect timing for the colder weather to come. And so those are the photos for you to see for Grant Middle School. Next, we have Jefferson Middle School, SM Wilson. Really, they've been doing demo work on the cafeteria, making sure the prep area for excavation is ready to go. We didn't get an aerial view of Jefferson or Washington this time, but we'll do that the next time for you. Sandburg Elementary, this is a big cement slab, so that's it would be the north, kind of west wing of the school. And then they also have a slab of concrete for the new beginning, kind of the entrance into the school. No interior renovations have been started yet, but they're doing all the exterior work as we speak. And last but not least, Washington. Once again, this is kind of the aerial view. You can see some of the work over to the far west side of the building, but they've done a lot of work with their restrooms inside. They look really nice. The restroom can look nice, it does, when you go inside. And then they've started some work out back as well. So we're ready to go. The tile for the restrooms are still in Mexico somewhere, he said. So, yeah, they're on the way. But they're starting the exterior addition demo, so you're going to start to see things moving at Washington a little bit as well. So we appreciate the hard work. Daryl, do you have any other updates for us or any other things you'd like to share?
No, there will be a couple of change orders tonight on the agenda. Everyone's working real hard at these sites. Our department and the contractors appreciate everyone's cooperation during this type of thing. It's not easy to run a construction job during the school. Last 10 years or so, we tried to accomplish everything in the summer. These are bigger than that. And so we appreciate all the students, all the staff, all the administration at these schools in there, pardon our mess, we'll clean it up.
And I did have somebody ask me at one of the sites on the first day of school, what is going on? I was like, it's the first day of school. That's what's going on. Yep, and it never looks pretty, so we appreciate it. And we know even like at Sandburg, they have such a small parking lot. Ryan can probably speak to this. It's hard to get in and out of the parking lot with the big trucks, but we're making it work, and every day's a new day for sure.
I appreciate what you said, because I've seen a lot of teachers and students do a lot of, safety's definitely heightened, and you can definitely tell.
Yeah,
So I really appreciate that.
It's like big truck day every day.
Right.
Just at the other at all schools now. Yeah, it's pretty fun. Just wanted to move on and tell you a little bit about some other things that are near and dear to your hearts, I know. Shield of Illinois, the saliva testing program. We have rostered the students, and we've only rostered students who consented to the testing. So we are starting our process. We wanted to explain a little bit about what happened to the results. They go into a system called Point and Click, which is owned by Shield of Illinois. It is HIPAA compliant. Only designated central office staff have access to that, so it is very limited to who can see the results, and we did that on purpose. If there is a positive test that comes out of one of our SHIELD testing, then one of the SHIELD team members will call one designated administrator at each school, so that it does not go any further than that. Coming soon will be an option for families to actually log in to a website and be able to check only their child's results as well. And so as soon as that is up and going, we will communicate that out to our families. And once again, this is only for consenting students to be tested. We wanted to also remind you that the governor did extend his executive order last Friday on September 3rd. He extended the dates on his order. So the date that his executive order was that all staff that work with a district must be vaccinated or agree to test weekly. And that has been extended now until September 19th for school staff, primarily because getting these testing programs up and going is cumbersome, and every school district in the state needed it at the same exact time. So just to give the schools and hospitals, I think we're the same, so healthcare workers, all of that call for vaccination was hard, and also for testing. So we wanted to go ahead and tell you, though, that staff results, they can check their own results. Shield will only report to that one administrator if there was a positive case, and that's only if they're tested at a school site. There also could be community sites for Shield. They're working on setting one up, so that's a coming soon. The community site would be open for anybody to go and get a saliva-based test, but if one of our employees went there, we would not get the results, so the employee would have to give us the results. So the way the executive order reads is by September 19th, everybody has to be vaccinated or consent to getting tested once a week and giving us the results, whether positive or negative. We'll know if it's a school site, but if it's not, we won't know. So that's kind of where we are with the Shield. Just going on to the next slide, I'll show you what we have set up so far. We did our first dry run at Southeast High School today. We had a few adults that went down and chose to get tested since we're not under executive order until the 19th. It wasn't mandatory yet. But we did have 87 students, I believe, get tested today. We were just kind of working out the flow. The longest a student was out of class was 7 minutes today, from down to back. So Thursday, tomorrow we'll be at Springfield High, Thursday at Lampier High School, and then Friday they're going to do Jefferson, Washington, Bachel, Lindsay, and McLernan. And then next Monday, they're planning to go to Franklin, and that's kind of where the planning is stopped at this point, but they're going to give us a schedule. So they're going to have, and we're a big, gigantic system, multiple teams going out to multiple schools, but the idea Southeast will always have Tuesdays, Springfield High will always have Wednesdays, so that they always know when they're going to get tested, and then they can plan accordingly. Once again, it's only rostered students who have consented. Also, multiple teams. The scheduling from Shield has not come in yet. I would have loved to have had a full schedule, but we're still working with them. But we're happy to get these schools going. These actually schools are some of our larger elementary schools and middle schools, so it's good to get in and get going on that. All right. So I wanted to introduce a District 186 partner. Along the way, I have had to rely on the Sangamon County Health Department a great deal. I've had to call day and night sometimes, especially when this happened. I've had to reach out for advice on individual cases. I've had to reach out on advice when I myself had COVID, and they checked in on me daily. So I think that, Sangamon County Health Department oftentimes is sort of like being the superintendent. You get awfulized a little bit because, you're just in the seat and you're going to get the brunt of whatever. But I want to thank both Gail O'Neill and Dr. Vidya Sundaresan, who are here with us tonight, and they can come on in and make their way to the podium, on responding to me quite quickly when Mr. Miller actually asked if maybe we could have a representative from the health department come and speak. I sent one email, Micah, and they both said yes in one fell swoop.
Awesome.
So I think that shows that we have been working in partnership with one another and working hard to answer all the questions, and they do not have 12 arms, they only have 2, so they work really hard and fast alongside us. So thank you for being here tonight. Julie, if I could ask you to turn off my presentation and go ahead and turn on theirs, I think we're ready to roll. Okay. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. We appreciate being here and the invitation, and we had some questions, so we, Sundaresan did the hard work of putting it together, and so we'll attempt to go through this together. We've done a lot of presentations and want to be able to provide information this way.
Thank you, Gail. Always, a pleasure to present with you. And thank you, Superintendent Gill and respected board members, parents, media. Thank you for this opportunity to come and talk to you all. There were some questions that were provided to us beforehand, so we're just going to be going through those. Next slide, please. So is COVID a public health crisis? Is COVID more deadly than the seasonal flu? Can someone who has COVID and not show any symptoms still infect other people? A public health crisis, by definition, is a difficult situation or a complex health system that affects human beings in one or more geographic locations and from a particular locality to encompass the entire planet. Health crises generally have significant impacts on community health, loss of life, and on the economy. So I guess COVID fits that definition. So yes, it is still a public health crisis in terms of the number of people that are getting sick, getting admitted to the hospitals, and death. Next slide, please. As compared to, these are some of the resources I put together, and these will be available on the website. These are some reliable resources, WHO, CDC, and also the emergency planning that CDC kind of talks about in terms of still calling COVID a crisis or a emergency or something that we need to plan for from a public health standpoint. I've put together a few slides or a few graphs there which compare what COVID looks like in terms of mortality as compared to flu. The first one there shows you that overall in the United States, COVID in the last 1 year rose to number 3 in terms of mortality after cancer and heart disease. And that's a lot. That's a lot. So it does have a lot of impact in terms of mortality. The second graph compares flu with COVID. You will see that as people age, this was from July of 2020, so we still did not have the vaccines. The mortality now in people who are older has come down because of the vaccination. But even if those numbers or those bars don't look very big as compared to the flu numbers, which is practically negligent there, the percentage increase is definitely substantial between COVID and flu. And then the next graph kind of shows you what seasonal flu as compared to COVID deaths looks like overall. And then 5 times more risk of hospitalization. And in the middle, I have put together the slide which talks about an R0 or the tendency for the virus to infect. And this is specific for the Delta strain, which is currently circulating. The R0 is 2.5 times more than what we found with the Alpha strain. So what that means is for one infected person, you could go with 6 to 8 people that get infected as a result of this infection. And again, the last one just kind of talks about hospitalizations, mortality, and overall the effect of COVID versus flu. COVID is definitely faring worse as compared to the flu. Next slide, please. The next question, which talked about symptoms or not, there's a spectrum of infection severity, mild, severe, critical illness, and overall case fatality, which I've listed there. 81% of people, although they do not seem to have any symptoms or could have mild disease with COVID, they could be managed at home. But they do have a tendency, if they have risk factors, to get worse and get admitted to the hospital. So we need to be mindful of that. And there are some medications to actually keep these people out of the hospital now, even if they are not really sick with mild disease. There is an infusion called monoclonal antibody or Regeneron, which people can get to stay out of the hospital. I want to actually point to that last line there, which talks about post-COVID symptoms or syndrome. 30 to 80% of people with COVID could have that. So even if they did not have any symptoms or mild disease, there is reports of that. Next slide, please. So you wonder what it does to children. This is a picture of a multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children, also known as MIS-C. And this presents as persistent fever, abdominal pain, vomiting, diarrhea, skin rash, a rash that's profound. And in severe cases, it can be with low blood pressure and shock. So those are bad things. And this happens about 4 weeks after people can get COVID. And we have seen cases of MIS-C in our county, in our hospitals as well. So just wanted to point out that it's not risk-free and it can be dangerous, although not in many kids. Thankfully, it's not a very high percentage that you see this in, but these are some of the things that can present after COVID. I'll stop there. Gail, do you want to comment on these questions?
Yes. Can I ask a question real quick? I'm sorry. The MC, what was that? What was the name of that again?
It's called multi-system inflammatory syndrome.
Thank you.
In children. Thank you.
Dr. Sundaresan, when you talk about an R0, can you explain a little bit a similar disease that we might have that people will be more familiar with that has the same R0?
Yeah, some comparisons have been drawn to measles and chickenpox. I don't think it's a fair comparison because this is a different type of a virus, but just to show how infectious it can be as compared to what we had last year in March to now, it's definitely worse.
basically my thoughts on the transmission and is this a public health crisis? Well, I think we've all lived through the damage that it can do to our communities. We've had 23,351 people that have been infected with this virus, and we don't know what their long-term effects will be. So this is something that we are thinking about. 253 people have died from this in Sangamon County residents. So, yeah, it is really a serious situation and certainly a public health crisis that doesn't just affect the people that were positive or who had family members with. This is impacting our whole community, from last year's school to business to the health of our community overall.
Thank you. Next slide, please. All right, next, coming to masks. So the questions we were posed with are masks effective at decreasing the spread of any virus, I would say. I would just extend that. I would add any virus. And are they more likely to cause infections to the wearer? And is there a significant concern about oxygen or carbon dioxide levels when wearing a mask? So yes, they do significantly decrease the spread of infections, especially if they are droplet infections or respiratory-borne infections. COVID is a droplet infection. In fact, there was some concern that could be even airborne. So, but now, we want to definitely keep the masks on to decrease that droplet from when we are singing, shouting, or raising our voices. Those droplets are a lot more. So yes, it is effective in decreasing the spread only because it catches those droplets from going too far from us when we are speaking or speaking loudly particularly. And then does it cause any infections for the wearer? It is uncomfortable. Masks are uncomfortable, but they definitely do work. And if they are wet, they need to be changed. They need to be worn properly. If they are under our noses, hanging on our chins, then it's not really serving the purpose. So if they are worn correctly, worn consistently, they do not cause any infections to the wearer or people around. They help protect with all the data that we have so far. And lastly, is there any concern about oxygen or carbon dioxide levels when wearing a mask? In fact, there's some open space with the regular surgical mask too. It's not a completely closed system. And there is not enough space between our face and the mask for carbon dioxide to accumulate. So it causes those bad effects that you read about with when we've seen patients with high levels of carbon dioxide from other reasons getting admitted. That's completely different. And nobody with a mask accumulates that much of carbon dioxide to manifest with any of those symptoms. Next slide, please. So I put together resources from CDC and then the American Academy of Pediatrics, which talks about what the mask does and how effective they are. Next slide, please. And these are some infographics, again, from CDC that talks about choosing safer activities. I want to also add that layered mitigation is something that the school, ISD and IDPH have talked about, where we're not able to maintain distances. Adding a mask kind of adds that extra layer of protection. So that is something I wanted to also mention here. But these are useful infographics from CDC which talk about how effective the masks can be. Next slide, please. This is a paper from Lancet, which was first published last year, talks about how effective the mask can be in terms of the percentages. So you can see with masks from 17.4% without a mask to 3.2% with a mask. So that's a substantial reduction in the infection rates. And we've also seen that places where masks are worn consistently, the level of community transmission has been low. The last two infographics there I have included are from WHO, which talk about carbon dioxide intoxication and not enough room for carbon dioxide to accumulate to actually manifest with any of those symptoms. Next slide, please. Do you want to add something there?
Sure. A couple of the things that people that have been dealing with masks since way before all of us have are the people in the hospitals that work in the hospitals and healthcare facilities, and many of them are wearing two masks. And I think we would have noticed if there was an adverse reaction to their ability to perform their duties while they're working with medical practitioners who can, obviously notice if they're not up to their normal standard of having problems from any of the carbon dioxide. The other thing, there is a problem we heard about with masks a little bit, and it was acne. So you heard with some of the students getting used to wearing masks before. There is a time where it can affect the skin a little bit, and a mask break or getting home and someplace where you can be unmasked would help the skin a little bit. And Vinny had said these masks, we've been wearing them, you know they get damp, so one of the things is to switch them out. And I think we've got to remember to encourage families with the cloth masks to wash them occasionally. Ideal if you get enough for the week, just wash them once a day or once a week. And just kind of remember just to keep them clean too. I think the other thing that we've seen with masks is we don't put our hands in our face as much. I mean, that's also something that's really kind of helping with all the things that we touch and things we do, that overall this is helping us curb a lot of illness, that hopefully when this is gone, we'll be able to remember these tips.
One example I'd like to end with, our flu rates were almost next to nothing last year. So that may be from the mass, most likely from the mass and hand washing that we were doing.
Dr. Sundaresan, in our county or just?
Overall.
Overall.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, so the next set of questions is on COVID vaccination. It is my understanding that COVID-19 vaccination is based on a messenger RNA technique. Was this a rushed vaccine? Well, mRNA as a technology has been around and studied for quite some time. They're studying it for different viruses, Ebola, Zika, in fact, HIV, and even cancer vaccines. So this is not a new technology. It's been studied quite a bit. And really nothing was expedited. The red tape, all the paperwork, bureaucracy, that part was expedited, but the science was not expedited at all. The vaccine development goes through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and before that there's a preclinical phase. None of that was shortcut. And we had enough people, in fact, more than enough people. World over, 5.53 billion vaccine doses have been given. In the United States, 374 million doses have been given. Illinois, 15 million doses have been given. So a lot of people have received the vaccine already. So we have those numbers. And FDA on April 23rd approved the vaccine after a thorough review of all the side effects from multiple sources, CDC, NIH, multiple sources, and that's after reviewing that is when they actually approved the vaccine. So nothing was really rushed scientifically. It was only the paperwork and the bureaucracy part which was expedited. And does this alter our DNA? This is just a small piece of protein called messenger RNA, which is covered by a lipid layer. That's what the composition of the mRNA vaccine is. When it's injected, it does not even go into the cell nucleus. It is only in the cell body there, where it uses some proteins from the body to make a spike protein to help us recognize the antibody response for that. And when there is a real infection, the antibodies are already there. So there's a picture later on, and I've linked that to the New York Times vaccine tracker, which really very nicely explains how mRNA vaccines work. The mRNA does not at any time get integrated with our cellular genetic material at all. So I want to clear that. And then can you share your opinion on mRNA vaccines as a general tool to fight fight viruses? I'm in infectious diseases. I've given a lot of vaccines. And mRNA technology, what really was fascinating for me as a specialist is that these are over 90% effective. As against flu vaccines, we see that their efficacy can be 50%, 60%. So these are really efficacious. So that's something which I see a lot of value in. And what kind of symptoms do people experience? It's reactogenicity, where they can be redness, some fever, malaise, fatigue after the vaccine is given, and that's all your body responding to the vaccine, your body actually producing that whole cascade of chemicals and antibody response, which is a good thing, actually. So it should not last more than 48 hours. Have you seen what are the worst and best responses? So best response, I would say, give my own example. I actually called the day, called in the day I got the vaccine, thinking that I'm going to have a really bad side effect. I didn't. I had to go back to work. But yeah, so a lot of people did not have any side effects at all. And then the worst case scenario can be anaphylaxis, or an allergic reaction where people's throat can close up if they're allergic to one of the vaccine components. And that is like 1 in 11 million or so that they actually found. So it's really pretty rare. And we were in fact planning on having an ambulance when we were giving the vaccines for the first few times. We don't do that anymore because an anaphylaxis is so rare. And then, sure, please do. Sorry.
We did have an ambulance for quite a while, and still what we found, and even most recently, is anxiety has caused a lot of this for people that are just really nervous and concerned. Even some of the younger people, when we say, well, when's the last time you ate, or have you had anything to drink, and they hadn't eaten for several hours, or they come in the morning. So some of this is, not that there can't be some, but I think we have anxiety that everybody is maybe facing with this, as well as making sure they've got some liquids, they're not dehydrated, and so once they get a little water and relax and the test is over. And that's the reason for anaphylaxis, for waiting for the 15 minutes and monitoring people. So thank you, sorry.
Thanks, Gail. That was a great point. And then I think the last part is with regards to boosters and is this the best tool that we have? After November, when the vaccines came in, the graph just dropped like that. So yes, I do think that these are very important. In addition to hand washing always helps. And then, maintaining distance, etc., wearing 2 masks, etc. The more people we get vaccinated, the sooner we get vaccination done, we can kind of step back with those things. If our community transmission comes down, we can definitely stay away from that. That's what happened when our community rates really dropped earlier on in March, April of this year. Booster, just one word now. We are just giving it to people who are immunosuppressed. And more information is coming out to see if this might just be a 3-part vaccine series, or if there's going to be a booster needed. But the data is looking pretty promising for antibodies, which may remain there after the 3rd dose. We don't know. That's something that CDC is still studying. All right, and next slide, please. All right, these were the vaccine resources. Next slide, please. This is the mechanism of the vaccine, that little gray circle with a red spiral structure. That's really what's in the vaccine. And it doesn't even go to the nucleus. The nucleus is that little gray thing inside the blue big circle. Nothing goes there. It just kind of gives the cells a message to produce those red triangles, the spike protein. And they create the antibody response and also some cellular response, causing the T cells to be super killers when the real virus is actually encountered with. Next slide, please. Again, CDC infographics, Be Safe is something that they're tracking all the side effects on. And this is given as a flyer for anybody that gets the vaccine. It also reminds you, if you put the app on your phone, also reminds you you're due for your next dose, etc. So it's been pretty useful for a lot of people. Next slide, please. All right, metrics, scale. I think I'm going to ask you these questions on guardrails that we should be looking for closing classrooms or closing entire schools, and then how did the district and the health department come together, and what does an adaptive pause look like?
Okay, thank you. The guardrails and the adaptive pause was something that we've recently seen where local public health has some say in that. We're like, great, we don't know how to run schools. We know how to do public health and try to keep everyone safe. And I would say that, we aren't the experts on shutting schools. I don't know what the metric is when somebody has to close down for a influenza. Is it when you don't have enough teachers to hold the class? Is there a percentage? I think it varies with each school and each situation. We certainly, if there was a big concern, we would talked to in this place, Dr. Gill and her staff. We talked to Jenny Hughes here often, all the school nurses. So we don't have any metrics at this time to know when is it too much, when are there too many cases. So we're hoping that we don't get to that point, but the state may give us some guidance, but I think it also recognizes that each school is different, each situation is a little bit different as well.
Gail, can I interrupt you right there? Because I think that's a really important point, and I really think you bring up a great point, that there's not a blanket answer of when we hit, I'm making up numbers, okay, so 5.633. That is not how that works in a public health scenario, correct? So it depends on that school, that classroom, that day, those circumstances.
Absolutely.
And I think that's important for the community to remember as we continue to move forward, because I get feedback saying, why isn't this school closed, or why is that one closed and this one's not? Why do we have this classroom here? Why do we have not that classroom there? And it's really important, I think, the public understand that the district education leaders work alongside the public health leaders to come up with a plan that everybody is comfortable with.
Correct.
And it really has to do with contact tracing.
Contact
It really
tracing,
does.
yeah.
And I think
The
sometimes...
source of the illness.
Right, the contact tracing, which I know we'll get into a little bit more, but yeah, the source of the illness, we may start out really strict until we know how, say 14 days for everybody, no matter what, until we can whittle down really what is the risk to the other kids and the other faculty. So yeah, it's one of those things, if we start, and then we may have to change gear a little bit, but at this point, closing schools would not actually come from my department at this time. We would do this together if it was ever necessary.
I think everybody wants to live in the number, because
Yeah.
IDPH put out, here's 4 metrics that you should live by, and unfortunately that's all the numbers they put out, and so people are really attached to those metrics, when in fact what we're doing is above that even more, meaning we're not going to just look at these numbers, we have to look at these numbers and how they apply to this situation.
Right, and that's the layered mitigations that Dr.
Yes.
Sundaration had talked about, is, masking and being very faithful with that, hand washing, distancing as best you can. There's a lot of variables in this, so you're right. And the other thing I did miss on the last one's vaccinations is Sangamon County has 53.48% of its population vaccinated. Our herd's not fully immune yet. The youth between the ages of 12 and 17 have 49% of them vaccinated. That's come up a little bit, but we still are going to propose that vaccinations are our best defense. So we'll go from there.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, like you mentioned the, metrics. Last year, we did not have vaccines. So we were looking at percentage positivity for community transmission, number of cases per 100,000, youth clusters. The metrics may still be important in terms of making sure our hospital systems are not overwhelmed. But other than that, at this point for schools, it's much beyond that. What resources are available, how much testing is occurring, and I'm a proud parent of 186. Thank you so much for doing all this to keep our children safe here and healthy. So we're on the right track here.
So we've worked together for years, not just COVID, but we've been every year fighting the battle to keep kids in school for vaccinations. Last year they didn't get that opportunity as much, so we're catching up, and we appreciate that you extended their time so that they could get caught up with the vaccines they need for regular school and regular life. If there's anything else. But we have always worked together and appreciated the open communications. We can call one another, and that's we always have the school's best interest.
We have a couple more questions if we have time.
Yeah.
ICU bed availability, and then also in the hospitals, vaccinated versus unvaccinated. And then could the local hospitals be overrun with number of cases that we are finding?
Well, we have calls, and for a long time we had a call every single morning with the doctors and representatives from the hospitals and Springfield Clinic and SIU School of Medicine, and we kind of bumped those back to a day a week. We're up to 2 days a week. I'm not sure what will happen, but each morning we have, of our meetings, we have a report from each of the hospitals, and we've been a little cautious to say the hospitals are overrun. But the reality is that the hospitals are full, and they're trying to take care of everyone. They're not 100% full, but they're more crowded than they should be. But we also don't want people that did last time as far as stay home if they were having a heart attack or a stroke or something. Those were situations where people are afraid to go to the hospital. Our request, and looking at this, is that the more people that are vaccinated, we can get, they'll be less sick, there'll be less opportunities and that they need to go to the hospital. So each day, we kind of get an idea of what's going on with our hospitals. There are metrics for that, but the state's guide is, if you get below 20% of your available ICU beds, you should be worried and concerned. Sangamon County is in Region 3, and so they do it a regional area. We've got 18 counties in our region. And today there was 16% of the ICU beds available in this region. And there was 36 ICU beds available out of the 153 in this 18-county area. So to my knowledge at this point, they haven't had to shut the hospital down and send patients somewhere else or get bypassed through emergency situations. But it is something that, I'm always trying to be really positive and intend to keep doing that. However, the reality is this is something to watch and to be concerned about. So we don't want people to stop going to the hospital if they truly need it, but we want to make sure that anything we can do to help not put that burden on the hospitals would be helpful.
And next slide, please. Testing out policies and quarantine for children who are in the same household for more than those 14 days. Next slide, please. So we do have these recommendations from IDPH on 14-day quarantine, 10-day quarantine, 7-day quarantine, and a test to stay. And there are really criteria there for the school to make sure they have adequate resources for running those tests and reporting them, maintaining those records, if that's a possibility. And the type of tests that are recommended are an antigen test or a shield, as Superintendent Gill was mentioning. So if those are available, then these options are also available. So a testing out policy, one of our board members asked about that. Some schools can do it if they have the ability to test on day 1, 3, 5, 7. We're definitely working with the district to see if that can be incorporated here as well. And then household contacts is a different deal. They're more infectious, so that's the reason why the quarantine period actually is longer. It's unfortunately how CDC looks at it, and it can be very annoying. Child is perfectly well, you're just keeping them there, but it's just because of the higher risk of a household contact, somebody that you're living with has COVID. So that's the reason why these quarantines are a little bit longer. All right, next slide. And next slide, please. These are some slides which we incorporated about the criteria for schools to meet for option 3 and 4 for the testing out or the shorter quarantines. And next slide, please. This is information for Sangamon County Department of Public Health, the website with the COVID dashboards, and then also the numbers for any COVID-related questions.
The documents that Vidya referred to, and every time there's something new, we do update our website so people can go there. Even information about testing and where to go for that, it changes about daily. We try to keep it up on the website. So those should all be there. If you find something that's not, we'll be happy to put it on there. But we try to have it so the parents can look at it. Some of these things, as you've seen all the diagrams, it's not simple, and there's what ifs, this happens, what if that happens. But we try to provide most recent information. So, yes.
What's the likelihood of someone catching COVID after they've been vaccinated?
We have been hearing about breakthrough cases. That's what they're talking about, a breakthrough. So somebody that would test positive after have been vaccinated twice. They are seeing some of that, and I'm going to let you do the medical part of this, but we do have some cases of that. And we're going to see that. I think we're seeing it as the length of time from when we got our first vaccines till now. So this is part of the study that they're looking at. Do the vaccines start losing some of their efficacy as it goes on, thus the need for a third dose? I mean, it's hard to believe that this is all still new. It's relatively new science, and so we just don't know all the answers yet. But
yeah, so thanks, Gail. So, the time, and also if the person who received the vaccine is immunocompromised, and then Delta variant. Some of those variants also have a tendency to evade the vaccine immune response, which may not be enough. You still get a high enough number that may not be enough to prevent them from completely falling sick. But the advantage is that they do not get critically ill, they do not have severe disease to get into the hospital, and they don't have a bad outcome like death. So the vaccine is extremely efficacious. In our hospitals, people who are admitted, 90% or more are unvaccinated, people who are admitted. And people who are on the vent, critically ill, with respiratory failure, 1% or less are vaccinated. So it just goes to say that there's a clear difference between what we see in the hospitals with people who are vaccinated versus unvaccinated.
And the hospitals are publishing that.
Yes.
Both Memorial and St. John's are putting out here's who we have in the hospital, here's how many are vaccinated, and here's how many are not. Here's how many are in the ICU, here's how many are not, and then, of course, how many are vented. And the hospitals are putting that out daily now.
I don't have a question, but I think we need to repeat some things that you said. I don't know how many people are watching this broadcast tonight, but in order for our numbers to keep going down, it seems like to me there are 4 things we need to do, and that is the mask, hand washing, social distancing, and taking the vaccination. And I think it's important for people to know that we'll continue to have this virus go down in this county. Now, I don't know if a lot of people are aware, I read this the other day. You said a while ago we're at 53.7 vaccinated, which I think is the 5th highest county in the state for vaccination. But on the flip side of that, you got to look, 47% of us have not been. So we're not there yet, as far as vaccination. So I think in order for this to go down, we have to keep pushing these 4 things. And thank you so much for coming tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I had a quick question. I noticed on the slide earlier there were 5 more deaths that were reported today, and 2 of them were pretty young. Have we seen individuals at a younger age that are now falling extremely ill or dying from this?
They are. We're starting to see younger. For the most part, I believe they've had some other medical condition. They have a comorbidity of some sort. And when we first started seeing after the vaccine and we're looking at the deaths, the hospitals are looking at them. We've looked at them to see is there a common link. And immediately I was like, okay, if they're vaccinated, which vaccine? Just anything you can think of. And there aren't any links that we can see that way other than I think 99% of them have comorbidities that put them at risk for not being able to recover. You see them. So.
Yeah, so, we are, in fact, a lot, if you look at the numbers and the percentage of age group-wise, people who've been vaccinated, 65 and above, there's excellent rates of vaccination. So we don't see that many people getting critically ill or, coming to the hospital for admissions. The numbers are very different from what we saw last year. So it is more of the younger people and people who are unvaccinated who have a chance, who have a tendency to kind of fall sick and get to the hospital. And the mortality too. It's the chance in unvaccinated is definitely higher.
So it seems like it's more of a function of the unvaccinated as opposed to the age groups, would you say?
Right, except for what, like Vidya said, the older population in the long-term care facilities and, the elderly that live at home and wanted to be vaccinated, we're not seeing those numbers. So their vaccination, the way that worked, and with all them being interested in being vaccinated, they're about 90% of the population in the over 65 is, and even, I guess, over 75 are vaccinated, and we haven't been seeing those deaths. If we didn't have the vaccine, you remember what we went through with some of the long-term care facilities and the number of deaths. 5 would be nothing compared to having a day with many, many. So this is better. But that's kind of what shows us the vaccine is working and doing what it's supposed to do.
And I do want to reiterate what Gail said in terms of comorbidities. I just want to clarify that for people who are younger, obesity, heart disease, if they already have that asthma, risk factors, then if they're unvaccinated, their poor outcomes, the chances of those further increase.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I also wanted to say one last thing. Your time is valuable, but thank you so much for coming here, both of you. And Superintendent Gill, would it be possible to get this presentation?
We've already sent it to you, and we're going to put it on our website.
Awesome. So
We just got it right before the. So.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a shortcut.
Thank you.
That ends my report, so.
You went out with a bang.
Okay. Well, moving on to 7.1, old business. Do any board members have any old business to discuss? Seeing none, let's move on to 7.2. Do we have any new business to bring before the board?
I do have some new business, President Mars. I would like to read a resolution into the record. And this is something that I've had in the hopper for several weeks. I've talked to several board members about, and also Superintendent Gill has talked with you about it, and decided to wait for the right time to bring this forward. Based upon Executive Order 2021/20, which mandated vaccines for our teachers and staff, based on the FDA approval of the Pfizer vaccine. And then now that we have 2 weeks of data from in-person learning, I believe that this is the right time to read this into the record. So I've given a copy to all of the board members. I'll go ahead and read this, and then I would entertain any comments or any questions. The intent would be to bring this forward at our next regularly scheduled meeting for a vote. So I will go ahead and read this. Whereas the state of Illinois currently requires students entering, transferring, or advancing into pre-kindergarten through 12th grades of any public, private, or parochial school to have completed health examination requirements and to provide proof of immunizations against many serious illnesses and communicable diseases. And whereas the Illinois Department of Public Health recognizes that immunizations, also known as vaccines, are one of our greatest defenses against many serious illnesses. And whereas the August 2021 Revised Public Health Guidance for Schools, Part 5, issued jointly by the Illinois State Board of Education and the Illinois Department of Public Health, recognizes that vaccination is currently the leading public health prevention strategy to end the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas Springfield Public School District 186 has hosted and will continue to host vaccination clinics to offer opportunities for students to receive the COVID-19 vaccination prior to and after the beginning of the school year. And whereas under Title 77 Public Health, Chapter 1, Subchapter I, Part 665, Section 665.230 of the Administrative Code, it is stated that every child prior to enrolling in public, private, independent, or parochial school in Illinois shall present to that school proof of immunity against diphtheria, pertussis, tetanus, poliomyelitis, measles, rubella, mumps, Haemophilus influenza type B, hepatitis B, varicella, invasive pneumococcal disease, and meningococcal disease. And whereas it is noted under 105 ILCS 5/27 8.1, Section 27 8.15 of the School Code, that if a child does not comply by October 15th with these requirements, then the local school authority shall exclude that child from school until such time as the child presents proof of having received those required immunizations, which are medically possible to receive immediately. And whereas, while it is the intention of Springfield Public School District 186 to expand opportunities for all students and empower them academically and emotionally, we also recognize the seriousness of the COVID-19 pandemic and the imperative for full-time, in-person learning to be safe and consistent. Therefore, the Springfield Public School District 186 Board of Education respectfully requests that the Illinois State Board of Education and Illinois Department of Public Health consider including vaccinations for COVID-19 approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration into the regular schedule of immunization requirements currently mandated by the state of Illinois. And that's the resolution in its entirety. Like I said, I would like to bring this forward at our next regular scheduled board meeting for a vote, in which case a copy would just get sent to ISB and IDPH, and that would be that.
Thank you.
So you're wanting to vote just that we all agree that we're going to send it somewhere, a recommendation?
Right. This wouldn't change any protocols. This isn't a mandate. This is just a recognition of the legislative process and encouraging IDPH and ISB that, at 186, we're ready. We recognize all the guidance that we've already been talking about. if people would ask why this is important, I would say that we just need to look back at the exclusion numbers that we've all been looking at. You know, we've had, out of a district of 13,370 students, I would say around 6,000 are currently eligible for the vaccine. Is that right, Superintendent Gill?
Yes.
And that number will grow as students celebrate birthdays to roughly half of our students. And right now, only 1 out of 4 are fully vaccinated. Right now, we've got about 1,400 students in exclusion, and vaccinated students can continue to attend school if somebody at home has COVID, if somebody at home has symptoms, or if the student is a close contact to someone who's tested positive for COVID. And it's right there in our Return to Learn plan. In each of these cases I just named, unvaccinated students get sent home for 2 weeks. So vaccinations keep students in school, period. You know, I certainly don't want to be having this same conversation next year if we've got 12 vaccinations that are already required and having to explain the value of COVID. So since we've got FDA approval, we've heard from our local health professionals, everyone who's eligible, including students, they should be receiving this vaccine to keep our schools open and to keep our schools safe. So I just want 186 to be on record that, you know, we recognize this dire situation. We care deeply about keeping kids in school and getting a quality education and keeping our community safe. So when this conversation occurs, we're on board and we're ready.
Well, I think it's an important discussion to have, quite honestly. I mean, like you said, we can't mandate anything. It's just, you know, we're reaching out to the governor, the State Board of Ed, IDPH to, you know, to make some considerations because we don't know what's down the road. Who would have thought we'd have still been in this 18 months down the road? I mean, seriously. And, you know, I just look at, and I saw what you put in the paper today, and I'm looking at this. You know, who of us questioned what was in the medicine when we got rid of polio, you know, and took the sugar cubes? I mean, we just did it because we as Americans, we pride ourselves on looking out for each other, and everybody just took to it and did it. And so, you know, polio is eradicated in every country except for Afghanistan and Pakistan. And it's just like, I don't understand why we're not looking out for each other in this situation. So I think this is really, to me, an important conversation to have because we're all neighbors. We care about each other, and we don't want to see anybody get sick. We don't want to see anybody die. And, you know, we've seen it for 18 months. Our neighbors are getting sick. Our friends are dying, you know, and it's just unnecessary. So I thank you for bringing this up because I think it's an important discussion to have.
One other observation I just wanted to note, since we've all been watching numbers like a hawk just over these past couple weeks, it appears that by now we're seeing a 10-to-1 ratio of positive students and then that translating into excluded students. We finished our first week with about 93 students positive and then 875 in exclusion. That all pretty much doubled over the next week. So of our 180 students or so that are positive, 70 of them are eligible for the vaccine. If you keep that 10-to-1 ratio, that's of our 1,400 students in exclusion, that can be chopped in half if people would just take the vaccine. So it's not only the right thing to do for the community, but it will keep our schools open. And everybody I've talked to, they want in-person learning to work. You know, they don't necessarily want to go back. We want to put our best foot forward and keep these doors open.
I don't think what you're talking about is out of the realm of reality. I mean, when I specifically asked that R0 question to Dr. Sundaresan, which is the contagion level, how contagious is this thing? If it's got an R0 the same as chickenpox and measles, we vaccinate against those. We have vaccinations to prevent the spread of chickenpox and measles in our schools. So if the R0 is the same level, then I think it's worth, you know, having that discussion about what that means for vaccinations statewide.
Mr. Miller, I totally admire the time that you put into this because I don't know where you found it because I don't have that time in my day. I know we had a conversation earlier about all the research that you had done and, you know, I was really, really impressed by that. So I tend to pride myself on really being open-minded and right now in my mind I'm thinking that I am definitely not qualified to ask anybody to update the school code, but I'm willing to think about it definitely for the next couple weeks and And if you want to send me any research that you have, I will be happy to read it. I'm just a mom.
I appreciate that.
You're a little more than that.
Well, I appreciate you, Micah, for this. Like Dr. Sadaration said, and Gail, we are in a serious pandemic health crisis, and so it's important to take active measure. I remember as a child, I had to go to the state fair and take that shot, that we all had to take the shot, and it was a long line. We did it, and it stopped. I think it was meningitis.
Yep.
So, and I was like 7, but vaccinations do work, and we should be on top of our game and get that done. Thank you.
One thing that we're working on, the last time that our students were able to share with us their vaccination status was registration, which was just before the school year. Now that we're 2 weeks in, we have heard of a lot of other students going and getting the vaccination or getting the first dose that are 12 and older. So we're devising a plan to be able to capture that data so that you have some real-time data, because that's helpful for you to know.
Thank you.
And I think that, as we get those numbers in, that'll help us, hopefully. Right now, we're roughly over 26% that we have on record, but that doesn't mean anybody who's gone since registration to get it is not going to be counted into those numbers. So I'll be working on that and figuring out a plan.
Well, I would say in the meantime, if anybody has questions, just reach out to me. Like I said, I think ideally I would encourage a favorable vote, a unanimous vote, with your support also, Superintendent Gill, and then just send this to ISB and to IDPH so we're on record and it won't change any protocols that we're doing now.
Mr. Miller, thank you for your time and all the information that you provided. Is there any other further discussion? All right, seeing none, we will move on to public comment. I have a statement I need to read. The Board of Education and I encourage public comment and public participation in board meetings. However, it is inappropriate for any person to name a student or an individual employee, including designating an employee by job title rather than name, in open session. If any public commenter wants to address issues related to an individual student or 186 employee, that commenter is invited to contact the board office or a member of the cabinet prior to public comment. It is not the intention of the board to discourage public comment in any way. Rather, it is the intention of the board to address issues regarding individual students and employees in an appropriate manner. We thank you for respecting the privacy of our students and employees by following this rule. Recently, YouTube removed a board meeting video due to information related to an important public health issue that they deemed not accurate. YouTube also provided a warning for further repercussions. Springfield's Public School District 186 encourages public comment, but we also desire that the public business be conducted at board meetings be widely available through YouTube. Therefore, we will no longer include public comment in our YouTube board meeting videos so that the public business is available to district families. The meeting is also available on cable channel 22, UVerse channel 9, and at all public access streaming links. Pardon me, which is available on the district's webpage. So that takes care of my disclaimer. Ms. Hammers, do we have anybody?
We have no emailed comments. We have the one.
We're so excited to have you as our new interim director, and welcome aboard. I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Superintendent Gill, President Mars, and members of the board. Tonight we'll go through our regularly scheduled business office report, and then we'll also take a look at our tentative budget for the year. So tonight's business report will once again provide a brief recap of where we are in the Capital Projects Fund and with our outstanding state payments. This slide will demonstrate the Capital Projects Fund, looking at our sales tax and bond cash and investment dollars, with revenues of just over $1 million and expenses for the month of August near just over $2.8 million, leaving a balance of $80,789,917 at the end of August. Next slide takes a look at the outstanding state payments. Here we're going to look at both fiscal year last year as well as the fiscal year this year. You're going to look at showing a fiscal 21 balance due just over $1.25 million, and then the fiscal year 22 balance of nearly $350,000 today. That was as of Thursday afternoon. So we're still waiting on a little bit from the state there to wrap up and close out last year. Again, we're just getting ready to start our audit, and we'll be closing all of this out. Hopefully those funds will be received here shortly. Moving on, next, we'll take a look at the tentative budget. This is definitely a work in progress. These are preliminary numbers, and they're unadjusted, unaudited, and we'll take a good look at what we can do to answer some questions and continue to modify this and have a full presentation at the board meeting next month where we can vote. This will definitely take a look, presenting to some of the information that was put together by Mr. Fretz in the transition, along with our Director of Accounting, Andy Burris, and others in the business office. So we're looking at the timeline to get the final budget to you here in the next couple of weeks. I had the opportunity today to meet with our Chief Officer of Federal Funds, Mr. Larry McVeigh. We'll be meeting with Ms. Burris again later this week, and hopefully getting a little bit clearer picture to you for the 21st. On the operating fund budget, these numbers are representative of the current tentative budget without regards to CARES and ESSER funds being accounted for at this time. This is just a reminder that those grant dollars are in and out, but will probably potentially aid us in covering some of the budgeted expenses. Taking a look at this slide, we'll look at a total revenue of just over $206 million and an estimated total expenditure of $212.7 million. Now again, this slide presents the major operating funds, education fund, the operations and maintenance, and transportation. This tentative budget leads us to a projected budget of roughly $5.9 million. You see that there. These final figures won't be available really until we finalize our audit from last year and really finalize the numbers for this year projected. The estimated fund balance puts us at a 13% operating budget, and that is the calculated based on the fund balances to revenue ratio. And that's an amended budget last year was stated at 16.1. Now the board policy 405.03 establishes that the fund balance be between 15 and 20%. In my meeting today with Mr. McVeigh, we looked at a potential carry forward in the CARES and ESSER funds roughly of 2% or maybe just a little bit greater, which would cover us and get us into that 15% operating budget range, which indicates that we're operating within the board policies. The working cash fund balance is $15.5 million, and although we're presenting an unbalanced budget, we're not required at this time to provide a deficit reduction plan to the state with our submittal. Taking a little bit closer look at the education fund, revenues projected in the education fund of $178.8 million, roughly an increase of $3.4 million or 1.95% from the amended budget from last year. Expenditures looking at $182 million, which is an increase of 1.25 or 0.69% from last year's amended budget, with a projected deficit of 3.4 in the education fund. Looking at a projected fund balance at June 30, 2022 of $8.6 million. In comparison, looking at last year's projected deficit was roughly 5.58. So we've tightened it up just a little bit there, looking at a reduction of 2.2 comparative. As a rough estimate, each percent of salary increase costs the district about $1 million. So a 3% plus step probably equals roughly 4.1 to 4.2%. So that is definitely identified there within the projected deficit. Also, food services had a $700,000 deficit last year as it continues to recover from COVID issues that it had experienced. In the past, food service had at least a balanced or had surplus, so that's just some of the indications of why those numbers are a little bit spread this year. Other programs obviously are continuing to feel the effects of COVID as well. Next is the Operations and Maintenance Fund. Here we're looking at revenues of $15.7 million, slight decrease, 4.12%, decrease of $676,000 from the last year amended budget. Expenditures of 16.6, a decrease of $517,000 or a 3% reduction from last year's amended budget, yielding a projected deficit of $862,000, and that results in a projected fund balance June 30, 2022 of roughly $1.7 million. Next slide, please. The third of the main operating funds, the Transportation Fund. Looking at revenues of $12.2 million, increase of $169,000 or 1.39% from last year's amended budget. Expenditures, nearly $14 million, an increase of $1 million or 7.8% from last year's amended budget. If you may recall, First Student had reduced some of their busing contract last year by approximately 20% due to COVID. So that's one of the main contributing factors why the increase in expenditures looks so great. And also it's the next year of that First Student contract, which already had built in increased service fees. Projected bus deficit coming out of the Transportation Fund is roughly $1.6 million, yielding a projected fund balance June 30, 2022 of $895,000. Next slide, please. Here we'll take a brief look at the IMRF fund. Looking at revenues of just over $7 million, expenditures of just over $7.1, yielding a projected deficit of $76,000, and a projected fund balance as of June 30, 2022 of $283,000. And the last one we'll take a look at this evening is the Tort Fund. Here we are showing revenues of $4.1 million, expenditures of just under $4.4 million, yielding a deficit for fiscal year 22 of $258,000. Projected fund balance June 30, 2022, roughly $200,000. Now we'll look at a brief recap. We're looking at, again, putting some things together to take a look at reducing that deficit with a shift in ESSER funding. Again, I had my first meeting on that today, but I saw significant growth opportunity for us to reduce that deficit, and I'll certainly look forward to showing you that at the next meeting.
This was his official first day on the job. I think he did pretty well.
I think you did all right.
You know, it's a great opportunity. Having been here before with the payroll and budget, working with all of the managers in the business office, I couldn't have walked into a better situation. They worked really hard to try and support everything that we have going on. Some of our top priorities right now include the budget, the audits, Infinite Visions, as we're trying to get those type of things put together, and ESSER being a key function of what we do. We're going to have a lot of growth opportunities, and there's going to be a lot of things going on, and looking at long-term down the road and how those ESSER funds are utilized now, but what we do in the future. So it's a unique look at, okay, how can we best utilize those funds at this point in time, but knowing that they're not going to be there in the future. So we have some great ideas. I've been supported by everyone, and I couldn't have asked for a better first day.
Well, welcome aboard.
I do have a couple pesky questions. So just to make sure I'm clear, when we're looking at a $5.9 million deficit, what we're talking about is really a deficit to the fund balance, but 15% that we're carrying, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
No, it's, and that's, I try not to put too much out there because I think that number's going to change somewhat significantly as we roll in the use of ESSER dollars. It's going to be minimal. Like I said, after my meeting today with Mr. McVeigh, looking at the allowable expenses that we're able to put in, I think we're going to be a lot closer to a balanced budget than we've been in a while.
Okay. And then one other question that's maybe for either Daryl or for you, but I noticed, we've got a couple change orders that are on the roster for about, $45,000 between Du Bois and Graham. And I'm just wondering, as we start to hear some of these orders that come in, how that squares with the 1% sales tax that we're collecting, because it seemed like we were collecting as much, if not a little bit more, than we anticipated. Is that correct?
We're over $1 million in the fiscal year more than what we expected.
Okay.
We expected about 10 million and we were close to 11 million. So that money can be put to that effect. We also put some money aside when we did this so that if there's money that isn't already expended.
So that gives us breathing room for like Fairview when they did the
Yeah, these
sewer
things
line.
are going to happen a
Okay.
lot, you know.
When would we have final audited numbers from June 30th of 2021? I know you're dependent upon the auditors, but...
Last week, I made a proposal of them just to try and push back a week or so. They just got done doing some of their initial preliminary work. Right now, we're getting ready to work on our working papers. With the situation that we're in with the transition at the leadership, we tried to look at a couple different options. The best option available to us, perhaps, is getting a little guidance from them, as long as we don't cross that line of independence on their audit. So we're going to have them help us a little bit in guiding us the right direction to the point that we don't cross that line of independence, so that they can still do our audit as well. So the timeline, to be honest with you, we've tried to push it back to the end of September to apply all the field work. So my hope is the December board meeting, you would get that information.
Okay.
And that's tentative. I'm hoping by the 21st that I have a better answer for you.
Well, because that'll tell us then what our final fund balance was last year.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
How everything else is going to impact us with what we projected.
And we just
going forward
received
from
the
there.
ESSER 3 budget, so we're working on that as well, which is what he's talking about. If we can put some things into
Right.
that budget rather than ours, then it will help us with that overall.
Thank you, didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No,
There it is.
I appreciate the fire.
He loves it.
Well
He
done.
likes it. Thank you so much.
Well, Mr. Osborne, this is your first day and you're here till past 8 o'clock. Will you be coming in tomorrow?
Yes, sir, I'll return.
I believe all my cabinet will be here tomorrow.
Well, thank you and welcome aboard.
Thank you.
All right, so moving on to consent items. Superintendent.
Yeah, President Marks and members of the board, I present, it's like items 11.1 through 11.11.
So moved.
Second.
Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Hammers?
Blissett.
Aye.
Leal Wolf.
Aye.
Mars.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Ringer.
Aye.
Zimmers.
Aye.
Austin.
Aye.
That is 7 aye votes.
All right. Moving on to 12.1, roll call action items. Superintendent?
Okay, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Sherman. They're making their way through all the cords to get to the
Don't want to have to call my office for an injury.
Call yourself.
President Mars and members of the board, the superintendent recommends adoption of the personnel recommendations as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Do we have any discussion?
I just wanted to note, we do have a couple certified nursing assistants that are on this, is that right?
Yes, we have several. Yeah. I think we have up to 8 either LPN or CNAs that we're hiring this evening, plus a school nurse. So we're excited to have them on board, and they're assisting the nurses with all of the paperwork that we need. We appreciate that greatly.
Very good.
And our
We'll continue to look.
Our paraprofessionals are moving in the right direction?
Yes, we are. Earlier in the year, we had about 75 openings. We did some audit work and made sure we got the right, spaces that kids that maybe didn't come back this year reassigned, and then also have done some hiring, and I think as of today, we're covering just about 50. So we're feeling better, but we still have those openings out on our website for sure.
Thank you. Ms. Sherman? I'm sorry?
Would you like me to call the roll?
Ms. Hammond, I'm sorry. I thought she was going to read something.
Leal Wolf.
Aye.
Mars.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Ringer.
Aye.
Zimmers.
Aye.
Austin.
Aye.
Blissett.
Aye.
That is 7 aye votes.
I had one thing that I was remiss in saying, and I think if we do it here during personnel, it makes sense, but I did want to take a moment of silence tonight to think of James Wells' family. He's one of our evening custodians at Lanphier High School, and he passed away over the weekend suddenly. And then also, we lost Melvin Jordan, who is a longtime supporter of District 186 and coach at Lanphier High School. So if we could just take a moment of silence. Thank you very much.
Okay, and moving on to 12.2, approval of change order for Du Bois Elementary. Superintendent?
Mr. Shaver.
Thank you. President Mars, members of the board, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education approves the following change order and directs the superintendent to execute the necessary documents on behalf of the board. As for Du Bois Elementary School, it's change order number 2, in the amount of $18,337 to Evans Construction. And that was to reinforce our existing foundation and add foundation for the structural requirements of the corridor and the lower level. Once they started pulling that dirt away, it concerned our engineers that the stability of that existing foundation, which is one of our oldest, and
It's a little over 150.
yeah, so we reinforced it and added some foundation to the foundation.
And Mr. Schaefer, as we go through this, in our capital project, change orders are, we try to avoid them, but when they come up, it's something that's really we've had some due diligence, and these are really required in order to continue with our capital construction program. Is that correct?
That's correct. We don't look at them lightly. They're definitely things that are needed when you're working with an old building. We call them unforeseen conditions. We can't see below the ground very well. We don't do a lot of destructive demolition to investigate things. And unfortunately, Butler and Du Bois are two of our older buildings. And back in the day, they didn't save as many drawings as we do now. So it's hard to know what actually is below the ground in those conditions. So we do foresee some change orders, and they're generally either an unforeseen condition or something that the district feels will improve the building after the original design. So.
Well, thank you, Mr. Shaver. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Ms. Hammers?
Mars,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Ringer,
Aye.
Zimmers.
Aye.
Austin.
Aye.
Blissett.
Aye.
Lil Wolf.
Aye.
That is 7 aye votes.
Okay, moving on to 12.3, approval of change order for Graham Elementary School. Superintendent?
Thank you. President Mars, members of the board, now therefore be resolved that the Board of Education approves the following change order and directs the superintendent to execute the necessary documents on behalf of the board. And this one is for Graham Elementary School. That's change order number 1 in the amount of $24,977 to E.L. Pruitt Company. They are the prime on that project. And this is one of those ones where we added to the project because we thought it would be improvement to the design, and it's to add reheat coils and supply piping to the new air handling units for the gym. Basically, that'll help us control the humidity much more effective than
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Hammers?
Miller,
Aye.
Ringer,
Aye.
Zimmers.
Aye.
Austin.
Aye.
Blissett.
Aye.
Lil Wolf.
Aye.
Mars.
Aye.
That is 7 aye votes.
Okay, moving on to 12.4, student discipline. Superintendent?
President Mars and members of the board, it is my recommendation that one 11th grade student be hereby expelled from further attendance at Southeast High School through the end of the 22-23 school year without a program.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Hammers?
Ringer.
Aye.
Zimmers.
Aye.
Austin.
Aye.
Blissett.
Aye.
Lil Wolf.
Aye.
Mars.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
That is 7 aye votes.
Wanted to state that when we say without a program, we always have a program in District 186, and we do lean on our NAACP program that you did vote and approve their annual contract this evening. So even though we're without a program, we feel very strongly that we shouldn't leave any student without an option to get to their end goal of graduating from high school. So thank you for that vote, but I wanted to just make that explicit.
Well, Superintendent, thank you for the clarification. Okay, 13.1, our next regular meeting will be Monday, September the 20th at 5:30 for the executive session, and public session will begin at 6:30.
Mr. Mars, sorry, before you close us.
Okay, I haven't got to that part yet.
I could tell that's where you were going.
Yes,
I just, Superintendent, if you could just clarify real quick, because I know Dr. Sundaresan brought this up, that wet masks should be changed. If a student is in one of our schools and their mask gets wet, what are their options?
We have a plethora of masks available that we will give out, much like the ones that you wear, but we also have some masks that have been donated that are kid-sized by the Central Illinois Food Bank. We have also ones that have been supplied by Kidzeum, and so we have some other cloth mask options if a student would rather wear that than a surgical mask like you're wearing. And they are kid-sized and/or adult-sized to fit a face for everyone.
Thank you. I really appreciate that clarification. I think the public needs to be aware. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ms. Lilwolf. Okay, do any board members have any further business to come before
I
the
just
board?
wanted to also say thank you again, Superintendent Gill, for facilitating that update, and thank you to Dr. Sundaresan and also Director O'Neill for making time for us.
I concur. I mean, I think that was great information, and I hope that everyone has the opportunity to be able to view that information going forward and take that information that's